The Rules Committee will come to order. Let me begin by extending congratulations to all the members of the Rules Committee. I guess everybody on the Rules Committee who chose to run was reelected. And so I also want to say that we want to encourage everyone on this committee to buckle their seatbelts. I just came from a meeting where we went through the agenda for the next 4 weeks. And I think it's safe to say that we have lots and lots of work and many weeks ahead of us before we adjourn sine die for this Congress. And so I was just asked by Mr. Levin, if this was my last Rules Committee. I said, far, far from it. We've got many, many Rules Committee meetings that will take place in the next several weeks. And so I want to say that I'm particularly pleased that we're here on the issue that we are addressing today. Better late than never is what we were all taught as kids. And on the 22nd of August, Russia became a member of the World Trade Organization, and I believe very strongly that we should have been able to get it to the table ourselves before August 22nd. We were unable to do that, but we're going to be doing it now, and I'm pleased that it's something that's going to be done in a bipartisan way as we address both the trade and human rights issues. And so I welcome both very, very important members who have focused on the trade issue, the chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, Mr. Brady, and our good friend, our ranker, former chairman of the committee, Mr. Levin. So without objection, gentlemen, any prepared statement that you have? I'd be happy to yield.
It's Mr. McGovern, as you know, has been very closely involved with the human rights issue in this bill, and he is in Massachusetts, the funeral of our former colleague, Joe Early. He will be back tomorrow and to be able to participate in the debate, but he wanted me to let you know.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Slaughter. Without objection, gentlemen, any prepared statement that you have will appear in the record in its entirety, and we welcome your summary. Mr. Brady.
Glad to be here. I'm here today to respectfully request the Rules Committee report out, rule for House. As you know, this is a bipartisan jobs bill with strong commitments to enforcement and human rights. As you know, when Russia joined the WTO last August, it agreed to lower barriers to goods and services and to be bound by the WTO rules restricting discrimination against imports. Russia's membership will create greater opportunities for American companies, our workers, our farmers and ranchers to sell American goods and services to this growing market. However, will not be guaranteed these benefits of all these concessions by Russia until we pass this bill. Until then, all these benefits will go to our foreign competitors in Europe and Asia. We give up nothing in this legislation, not a single U.S. tariff, but we would obtain a powerful new enforcement tool and important rights with respect to the 9th largest economy in the world. I understand there are some concerns over whether Russia will live up to its WTO obligations and its willingness to resolve these trade disputes that fall outside the WTO. This bill addresses these concerns by making sure that the administration stays on top of Russia's compliance with its WTO commitments, tackling our longstanding trade issues with Russia, and addressing the lack of the rule of law in Russia. The legislation, as I mentioned, has strong bipartisan support. We held a markup of the bill in the Ways and Means Committee in July, and it passed the committee by voice vote. It is identical to the PNTR section of the bill, unanimously passed by the Senate Finance Committee. I ask the Rules Committee also, Mr. Chairman, to add H.R. 6156, the bipartisan Magnitsky legislation presented by the Foreign Affairs Committee, which helps to address the concerns over Russia's human rights record, concerns that many share with them. I also ask the Rules Committee to report out a closed rule allowing for 1-hour debate so we can consider and pass it without delay. And we can't miss any opportunity to help create jobs and support in our exporters. Yield back.
Hi, hello to everybody. I asked you about further meetings of your committee, Mr. Chairman, because I know you'll be retiring, but we'll say words about that at a later meeting. I support this bill. I think it will enable us to benefit from Russia's obligations. Remember, they went into the WTO without our action. So now the question is whether we will be able to take advantage of their obligations and their tariff concessions, and the answer is yes. It will also allow us to enforce those obligations when Russia fails to meet them. There are, though, some serious outstanding issues regarding our trade relationships with Russia, including IPR enforcement. So again, I think granting PNTR will allow us to move on those issues. Also, the bill today has some additional enforcement provisions, which I think very much strengthen the bill. It requires the administration to report on Russia's implementation of its commitments, and it asks the administration for a plan to address any deficiencies, and a new mechanism, I think very important, to gather information on bribery and corruption in Russia, which affects our trade relationship and affects the willingness of our business people to invest in Russia. And it also requires the administration, I think very importantly, to negotiate a new agreement to address IPR issues. As mentioned by Mr. Brady, also the bill incorporates the Magnitsky Act. And Mr. McGovern isn't here because of the funeral for our former colleague, a favorite of many of us, Joe Early. But I think the record should note Mr. McGovern's active role on this issue. The Magnitsky bill is really here because of his efforts in large part and that of Mr. Cardin's. And I want to just close by quoting those in Russia who have been part of the opposition but support this effort by us. And I quote, "Replacing Jackson-Vanik with the Magnitsky Act promotes better relations between the people of the U.S. and Russia, while refusing to provide aid and comfort to a tyrant and his regime at this critical moment in history. The object of the act is to publicly shame and punish the rank and file of Mr. Putin's mob so they know the big boss can no longer protect them." That's their point of view. But I think it's one that we need to hear. Let me also, as I close, indicate on this point that my own preference would be to have Magnitsky apply worldwide, not only to Russia, and we'll have to work on that. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I did talk to Chairman Camp earlier this morning about Russia and Syria. I think all of us remain concerned about Russia's support for the Assad regime. I don't think this should hold up action on Russia PNTR, but I do think we need to find a way as we vote, and many of us vote for it, to express our concern about Russia's support in many, many respects for the Assad regime and their opposition to American efforts to apply more sanctions. And so I'm pleased that the legislative record of this bill includes a Ways and Means Committee report that strongly condemns Russia's support for Syria. Mr. Camp and I made clear, and I quote, "Just as Russia is joining the international community through its accession to the WTO, it must join the nations of the world in addressing the violence against civilians in Syria and in safeguarding the human rights of its own citizens."
Thank you very much.
If you could do
Levin.
even more, I would support it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levin. I appreciate the comments that both of you offered. Let me just say that Syria is just one of those issues. It's a critically important one. It's obviously getting a great deal of attention because of the horrendous acts being perpetrated by Bashar al-Assad. But you can look at the crony capitalism, the human rights violations which continue to take place in Russia, and I believe that underscores the reason why we need to do this, to continue to force Russia to live with a rules-based trading system. And as Mr. Brady has correctly said, we have no guarantee that that will take place. We continue to deal with violations of IPR and other areas, but the idea of our now having access to the 140 million consumers in that country, I think, will inure to the benefit of those who want to address the issues of Syria, human rights, crony capitalism, and bring about the kind of political and economic reform that we think is so important. So I thank both of you for your dedication and the hard work that you have shown on this. Again, it's taken us a long time to get here. I'm sorry that it's taken us this long to get here. When you think about the market share that we've lost since August 22nd, it's to me very troubling, but it'll be a great victory, and I'm ecstatic that it's bipartisan. Mr. Sessions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and to both of our guests today. Sandy, good to see you again, and to see my dear colleague from the Woodlands, Texas, Kevin Brady. What you're speaking about today is right within the strike zone of our young Rules Committee Chairman, David Dreyer, who has for years not only spoken about and been a leader of talking about finding commonality with some countries that we don't necessarily completely agree with. As a matter of fact, sometimes may be adversarial, but for finding a way for America to come into contact with these peoples of other countries and put our best foot forward, which I believe is not just American-made products, but really American exceptionalism, where we make their life better too, where they can look up and say American products have made their life better and better their relationship. With that, I note that we expect to double exports to Russia in just 5 years, which helps create not only jobs in America, but really push this thing that Dave Dreyer has talked about for all these years of finding commonalities between peoples. And my home state, the gentleman from Texas, Kevin Brady's home state, Texas exported $1.6 billion of goods to Russia in 2011, and that directly supported 4,100 jobs. Those people in the state of Texas understood they were doing a good product to help America. And we are better of America as 50 states, strong states, and that we did our part there also. So count me in. I'm there. Not just because you're here to support this as a good idea, but because I believe in what my chairman has done for all these years. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Could I, Mr. Chair, just say 30 seconds worth? I very much agree with that. I would add, though, that trade alone doesn't necessarily bring about the changes in a society. And that's why we have the Magnitsky Bill as part of this. There's a need for us to press in other ways so that societies become more democratic.
Well, you know, Sandy, and I do agree with that, but once again, going back to the great Dave Dreyer, Dave said every avenue, every chance, every opportunity, if we as Americans take advantage of that to try and push our ideas and to be friends with them, then it beats only trying 2 or 3 ways. So
I agree with that.
I'm for what y'all are selling today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Session, may I just in 20 seconds say thank you for pointing out the leadership of David Dreyer. Truth is, America's trade agenda and all of our successful sales agreements around the world would not have happened but for David Dreyer's leadership. This is a great issue to finish out, moving the 9th largest economy in the world into the rules-based trading system and giving our agriculture, manufacturing, and services sectors a chance to compete on a level playing field. This is another great issue, and I thank again Chairman Dreyer for his leadership.
Well, I think I should make this the last meeting I attend to the rules.
Questions, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert the statement of administration policy.
Without objection, the
Thank
statement of
you.
administration policy will be included in the record. Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank these gentlemen for their good work and compliment you, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hastings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll thank both of our presenters. I'd like to ask the question of both of them, what implications, if any, or does this legislation have on continued human rights or concerns involving Russia? Let's take just one classic example, at least from my perspective, of continuing the imprisonment of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and added to that Russia's position with regard to international conflicts writ large, not just Syria. I could include in that concern that I have the country Georgia and its hopes for advancement that Russia continues to obstruct. Also, I would like if you all would both address that question of the implications of this legislation for those concerns.
Well, let me just read, if I might, should I go first?
Yeah, go right ahead.
It's a good question, and let me just read a summary and then apply, Mr. Hastings, to your question. The Magnitsky Act imposes a visa ban and freezes the assets of persons responsible for, 1, the detention, abuse, and death of Mr. Magnitsky, a tragic incident indeed, and 2, gross violations of internationally recognized human rights committed against individuals seeking to expose illegal activity carried out by Russian government officials or against individuals seeking to promote human rights and freedoms. So I think the answer is that this is an important provision as a signal and also possible implementation of a visa ban. It's not going to solve every human rights violation in Russia, including, in my judgment, the imprisonment that you mentioned. But it's a step in that direction, and I think an important step. And I think it was important to include this in PNTR so that this Congress expresses that trade relations are important. There are also other avenues, to use your language and Mr. Sessions' language, that must be followed. And indeed, they can have a relationship to trade, because our business community has discovered that it's more difficult often to do business in countries where there is not rule of law.
I would agree. The Magnitsky provision here is another strong tool for the United States to use. Obviously, the Russian administration does not support this provision, as negotiated by Mr. McGovern and Ilyana Ros-Lehtinen, but it is an important tool. It is supported by the opposition party and human rights groups within Russia, so I think it does add to that effort.
Right. Let me also, we've gone this far without mentioning the fact that Moldova is included in this. That portion I certainly am in agreement with. I will make a prediction for you. When a list comes out with human rights violations, it will be interesting to see Russia's reactions at the World Trade Organization, which I predict for you will be negative as far as the United States is concerned. I understand all of the concerns that people have about trade making a difference. I also share a concern with some of my colleagues as to why the Magnitsky provision only applies or solely applies to Russia, but I'll leave that on the side and cast my vote based on a considerable amount of experience, perhaps as much or more than most members of this committee and as much or more as most members of Congress. I have 16 years of continuous experience in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And I made a lot of Russian friends along the way in their Duma and in their various administrative positions. And I got to know them over the course of time and to see firsthand rejection of United States advancement in a lot of countries, and certainly seeing it go backward as far as elective offices are concerned. When I first observed one of their elections, all the way down to the provincial level, people were being elected and there was all this glow, and then along comes the now administration and categorically rejected all of that, which causes me serious pause about how it is we anticipate that they're going to act or react in the World Trade Organization. I predict for you that it will be the same negativity that we meet, and notwithstanding the fact that the human rights organizations, the opposition, to the extent that it can stay out of jail, will likely continue whatever opposition they can. But this methodology, I certainly believe, is not going to cause Russia to change one thing about their crony way of going about doing business. And it will likely lead to further implications for the United States. That's my prediction. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop. Wallace.
I agree with the chairman's sentiments. It's better late than never. I'll be very excited to support this bill. It would have been nice to see it earlier, but better late than never, and thanks for bringing it to us in the Rules Committee.
Mr. Woodall. Scott. Before I recognize Mr. Webster for any questions and an introduction of some guests that he has here, let me just say that we also want to, as a committee, extend hearty congratulations to Lydia Callio, who just married Jeff Strunk, who works on the House floor. And also, I should add to that, Jenny Gorski, who used to work on the Rules Committee, also got married while we were out of session to Jason. So, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what happens. So with that, let me recognize Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some guests here, friends.
We want to make sure that Mr. Levin and Mr. Brady get to see your guests, so that's why we're keeping them here.
Friends of our family. Charles Van Zandt and his family. He is a state representative from Florida, and he's here visiting the Capitol and watching our process. And hopefully he won't learn too much because it's a little slower here. But anyway, Charles and your family, good to have you all here, and thank you for coming. It's a slow but tedious process here, a little bit different than the Florida legislature.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Webster. And let me just say to you, Mr. Van Zandt, that your state, as is the case with the other 49 states, is the laboratory of ideas, as James Madison put it. And so the reverse of what Mr. Webster said is we have you here so that we can learn from you rather than the other way around. So thank you very much, and nice to have your family here as well. Yeah. Yep. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman.
Very much for being here. Thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing for consideration of H.R. 6156, and we will, I hope, get the rule distributed here pretty quickly. So the chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman from Dallas, Mr. Sessions.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 6156, Russian and Moldova, Jackson, Vanek, Repeal Act of 2012, closed rule. Rule provides 90 minutes to debate with 6 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee on Ways and Means, and 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair, ranking minority member on the Committee on Foreign Affairs. The rule waives all points forward against consideration of the bill. The rule provides an amendment in the nature of substitute consisting of the text Rules Committee print 112-33 shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points forward against persistence in the bill as amended. The rule provides one motion recommit with or without instruction. Section 2 provides that on any legislative day during the period from November 19, 2012 through November 23, 2012, the journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved. The chair may adjourn the House to meet at a date and a time within the limits of Article 1 of the Constitution, and the bills and resolution introduced shall be numbered, listed in the congressional record, and when printed shall bear the date of introduction, but may be referred to at a later time. Finally, Section 3 authorizes the Speaker to appoint Members perform the duties of chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 2.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just say that we in this rule provide for an hour of general debate for the Ways and Means Committee and an additional 30 minutes for the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is a standard rule for the consideration of trade agreements. And as Mr. Sessions pointed out at the end, we want to make sure that the institution can continue to function in light of the fact that we may not have an adjournment resolution. We want to be able to proceed through the Thanksgiving week. So are there any amendments to the rule?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Slaughter.
I'm obligated to ask my usual request for an open.
Yeah, well, you've heard the motion of the gentlewoman. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. And the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, sure. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox. No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall. No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent. No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster. No. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter. Aye. Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern. Mr. Hastings. Aye. Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis. Aye. Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Mr. Clerk, the total?
3 yeas, 8 nays.
And the amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs in the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Please show the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. And I'll be managing this for the majority. And Mr. McGovern for the minority. That should be the last meeting that we'll have this week. But as I said, we can expect lots of activity in the next month or so. So thank you all very much. Again, congratulations to all. Welcome back. And we'll look forward to a hard-working time. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.